Hello and welcome to Roll for Question, the stream where a veteran DM offers to answer any questions you might have about Dungeons & Dragons. And in the meantime, I'm just going to be talking about character death for a little while. So, very complicated topic, very important topic. Not a topic that new players, often bring up. That's not true. They don't bring it up when it's appropriate. What often happens, what I often see, is that a new player will come in and have a question. One of my players died. How do I deal with that? How do we move forward? And the thing is, if you're asking about character death, after it happens, you're a bit late. It's too late for that. Getting set up for death is all about session. You talk this through with your players in session 0. You want to have a setup. You want to build up the characters. There's a whole rigmarole to think about. Planning, getting set up, all that before the death happens, so that when it does happen, you're ready. So after it happens, okay, can't really do much at that point. Usually the question is asked in the context of okay, character's dead. The player needs to roll a new character. There's nothing in the book that says, did they do anything special? What do we do? So there's 3 trains of thought that I've seen. One is the player makes a new character at the same level as their previous character. And that's fine. All of these trains of thought have their advantages and disadvantages. Making a new character at the same level gets the player back in the game as soon as possible. Minimum disruption. They're back to resuming the pace of the game. That can result in devaluing death if the players die and then they make a new character, and that's the consequence. They get a new character with the same power level and all that. Is that really a consequence? For some players, absolutely. For others, not really. I have seen a game where one of the players strategically planned their death because they had a magic item that was better suited for a different class than they were. And rather than talk it through with the DM, rather than tell anyone this, they decided that I'm just going to get my character strategically killed, make a new character that is exactly the right fit for this magic item that I have. Is that good? Is that ideal? I don't know. I think some DMs might chafe at that. So there's a risk if you let players make a new character at the same level that they abuse the privilege. So just be aware of that. Another train of thought is the players make a new character, but they're at a reduced level. They're like, if the party's level 7, if they died at level 7, they come back at level 6, you know? It's kind of a compromise where the player's almost at the same level that they died at, so they get most of their power back. There's some punishment there, so there's less incentive for players to want to game the system, but they're not held back that much, so the disruption to the game is minimized, or I shouldn't say minimized, it's less. This does put strain on the DM, because if your players are leveling out of sync with each other, the DM has to account for all of that on their own. So if half the party is level 7 and half the party is level 6, that's actually not a big deal. If half the party is level 5 and another half of the party is level 4, balancing that on the DM's end is a lot of work. It's hard. And if you can't do it, then the players that are underleveled will probably lose interest in the game. Or if you miss the target in the other way, the players that are overleveled might lose interest in the game. So there's a risk. The last train of thought that I know of for handling character death is you get to make a new character at level 1. You get to start over. And this has advantage of like players that do this are most likely to get attached to their new character, because if you start a character at level 1 and you go up to level 7, that's a lot of time you have to get to know that character to build your engagement with that character, get your thoughts together, learn that character and all that, all sorts of this. Starting at level 1 and going all the way has that advantage, whereas if you make a new character at level 7, you don't really feel as attached to them right off the bat, and also you've just been handed a level 7 character that you haven't really been learning over time. So here's a bunch of abilities. Okay, cool. You know, not nearly as impactful as starting at level 1, leveling up to level 7, unlocking your level 7 abilities. It's also like getting dropped to level 1 is a pretty big punishment. So players learn that death is a really bad thing and they don't want it. No one wants to go to level 1. But there are downsides to this strategy of making your players make a new character at level 1. If you do that and the characters they're playing with are like not close to level 1, there's a good chance that the player loses interest in the story that's being told at the table, and they want to start a new one, because like this isn't their character's story. This is their character inheriting someone else's story. It's tricky, and it's also something. It's got the same problem where if you have characters of different levels in a party, the DM has to account for that balance-wise, and that's hard. That's even harder when one of the characters is level 1. It's just really hard. So yeah, characters might want to start over and tell their own story, and it's really hard for the DM to balance. Are any of those trains of thoughts better than the other? I actually wouldn't say that's the case. This isn't the kind of thing where there's an obvious advantage and anyone who doesn't do that is doing their game wrong. I don't think that's the case. But what is important is that your player's on the same page as you when it comes to how to handle death in your games. So ideally something you hammer out in session 0. Here's what happens if your character dies. You're going to make a new one at level 1. You know, if the players know that up front, great. If you haven't discussed it at session 0, bring it up with the table as soon as you can, as soon as the death happens, probably. Ask them, what do you want to do? And generally that's not the best time to be having that conversation, but it's better to have it then than never. And, you know, roll from there. Now, before I start going deep into death, I want to bring up resurrection, because resurrection is absolutely in this game. It's a part of the spellcasting system, and it's assumed that if you don't ban it, it's in the game, and the players are going to have access to it. How does resurrection interact with what we're about to talk about death-wise? So, like, if you plan on resurrecting a player's character, they're obviously not going to roll a new character. They're obviously not going to experience anything else that we're going to be talking about. Resurrection kind of puts a fork in death. It doesn't really matter. At that point, death is a tax, because resurrection in this game is expensive. It's not inaccessible by default. It's just expensive. So if a character dies, it's between 300 and 5,000 gold to bring them back. And that's a lot of money, but it's not so much money that the players will be like, oh, no, absolutely not. It's just a tax, you know? And that's not very... You can't do much with that as a DM. You can't do much with that as a story beat. You can't really balance things around, like... Do you give them less gold to discourage that? Like, you can't really do that, because gold is too... It's not just used for just resurrection. So if you give them less gold, you'll be affecting, like, how many healing potions they can buy, and how many when can they get access to full plate, and how many scrolls and all that. So if you have resurrection in your game, most of this video doesn't matter, and most of the conversations about death don't matter. Yeah. What happens when a character dies? You resurrect them, and then you move on. Like, cool. This is for everyone who doesn't have resurrection, and that's not super uncommon, because a lot of games happen below level 5, and level 5 is the first level you get access to resurrection, and that's Revivify. And Revivify is not that amazing of a spell in terms of resurrection. It still ruins death. Like, the moment, like, the character dies, people aren't going to lose their marbles. They're not going to go, oh my god. They're going to go, oh god, revivify. And then once the revivify happens, like, everyone's like, okay, good. It's good that we had that. Let's move on. This is not the list of spells. This is a list of spells. What did I click? Oh no, I did click the right thing. I am just going to go to the Revivify spell and point out the caveat with it. Most of you already know this, but Revivify only works on creatures that have died within the last minute. So generally, you have to cast it at the same time in combat. Someone dies in combat, you have to revive them in that combat or immediately afterwards. It costs 300 gold pieces. And it also costs a 3rd level spell, which is not nothing, you know. After that, you don't get access to, like, proper resurrection until level 9 with Raised Dead. And this costs 500 gold. But it works on creatures that have been dead for up to 10 days. And that's a lot more flexible. And there's a spell that extends this duration. If someone dies in a weird spot, you can cast General Repose on them, and then you can take as long as you want to revivify them or raise dead them, you know? Expensive. This is a tax. Most games don't get to... I'm pretty sure most games don't get to level 9. I don't know how many games get to level 5. I think that's not uncommon. But for games that don't, they have no access to resurrection. Death matters. Death matters a lot. So let's talk about it. What can we do? What do we need to think about before the death happens? Once the death happens and afterwards, we're done thinking. Like all of our setup is triggers at that moment. We can't retroactively set up. Death is a failure state in this game. Games have failure states. Death is one of them. That's generally not the sharp bit. What makes death so interesting? Because there's other failure states. We don't really care about them as much. I mean, they suck, but like if you lose a campaign because the bad guy escaped, they managed to plane shift away and you couldn't stop them. Like, okay, I mean, that sucks, but that's not as emotionally impactful as when your character dies in a blaze of glory or in like a heroic sacrifice, or if they're like if they're fighting the big bad evil guy and the big bad evil guy stabs them in the throat, like at the worst possible moment, like that hits us in a way that other forms of failure states don't. And why is that? Death, it ends our character, and presumably the whole thing that we've been building up as we play D&D is we've been building up engagement with our character. So every session, you get to know your character a little more, you get to know the party a little more, you build connections, you build bonds, you talk to NPCs. You want to find out what happens next. You want to find out what happens next with this character. Maybe they have like a vendetta with the big BBG. Maybe they have like goals that you really want to see them achieve. And, you get invested in that. So building that up over time is something that you kind of have to do intentionally. Or, I mean, you don't have to do it intentionally. You have to facilitate intentionally as a DM. You want to get your players invested in their characters. Make them care what happens to their characters. And doing that is just a matter of like running a compelling story that weaves the characters into the story, into the plot. And you run a good game, players will get invested in their characters. Run a good game. You build up engagement with the characters, and then death terminates that engagement. It turns it around. It suddenly, all those things you've been looking forward to, you don't get to see them anymore. They're off the table. They're done, and that's a loss that the players feel directly, and that is potentially monumental. It's something that catches us off guard and makes us feel when it happens. So being off guard is vital. So if a player is like intentionally dying, there's no impact there whatsoever. And if a player is in a situation where like it's not that they're choosing to die, but like there's a choice between safety and recklessness, and they choose recklessness, and then they suffer the ultimate price. Like that is fine. But if you expect the death, it doesn't hit as hard. I don't know if that's exactly how I'd say that. It's complicated. the the impact is more shocking when the players aren't expecting it. That doesn't necessarily mean you want to like ambush them with death. You still want to have like a fair, like, the players were doing something silly. They were doing something risky, and death was on the table. Everyone agrees that death was on the table, but no one actually expected that player to die, character to die, not the player. That's where the greatest impact is, and how you get there. That takes some DM finesse. DM finesse is instrumental. What you need to do is, hopefully you're not like killing your players, killing your characters intentionally, but you want to discover the death. You want the characters, the players, to discover the death. Yeah. There's probably better ways to say that, but I'm just gonna say, get your players engaged with the characters, and then as they're looking forward to finding out what happens next, everyone at the table is surprised to discover that death is what happens next. And how you cope with that loss is the emotional bludgeon of death, and you want that. That's what makes it so impactful and so memorable and so powerful. I was gonna say something, but I lost that thought. What you're looking for is setting up your narrative structure so that, I remember what I was going to say now. It's optimal if the death is also woven into the narrative of your game, into the pacing of the game. So what's going to happen is your players are playing, and then things are getting escalating. They're getting tense, and then the death happens, and at that point, the pace of the game is going to be cut. So players generally are going to react to that kind of thing with, that's generally, we want to start winding down the pace of the game to give the players time to digest. So like if a character dies, that's not the point where you're like, okay, and then the bad guy shows up and they start casting light. You want to focus on the reaction to that death. You want to focus on response to it, that kind of thing. You want to, if it happens like in the middle of a combat, you don't want to at that point just start escalating the combat. Start like, okay, the wizard just got their head smashed by the earth elemental, and 10 more earth elementals show up. Like, no. At that point, you kind of want the earth elemental to be like, I've done my work here. Back off. Let the party deal with what just happened. Or you go for a TPK if that's your style. You can do that, but the once a death has happened, the pacing of the game it needs to wind down to let people digest. If you don't wind it down, if you keep escalating it, the players might lose focus because they want to think about like what just happened, and meanwhile you're throwing other things at them that they have to pay attention to, or more people are going to die. So you wind the pace down, put the spotlight on the living characters, get them to respond, get them to react, get the players to respond, get the players to react. Make a moment of it. Take that death, make a moment of it, and then Once you've given it its moment, then you can start driving the plot right back up, driving the pacing back up, start pushing events that the players need to react to, respond to, bring forth their vengeance. If the surviving characters are like, we really are going to get vengeance on this, whoever did this, that's not necessarily the time for you to immediately put the vengeance target forward. But you could put like some breadcrumbs, like the earth elemental that smashed that wizard. You see their wake, you see their trail. It leads wherever you want it to lead. It leads into the forest. Then you can start guiding the party that way. You can start escalating once more. You can start saying, the trail is getting fresher and fresher here as you get closer and closer, and soon you will be upon the thing you hunt. What do? Build the pace of the game back up until you're back where you started? ? And then go from there. You can kind of take the death. It slows the game down, and then you use it to push the game back forward, and go from there, and continue to escalate things as well. So once that's happened, you've got a player not playing the game, and there are some schools of thought about what you do about that. One school of thought is, you died, you don't get to play the game for the rest of the session. Deal with it. You can spend the rest of the session making your new character. That's a very traditional sense. It's not one I agree with. I think that letting people play the game is better than making them not play the game. So what you can do is, and what some tables do is they'll say, bring a backup character to this table. Maybe you'll make a backup character at session 0. That way, when you do die, you're good to go. Pull out the backup character. Give the party like 15 to 30 minutes to go through the ritual of, like, oh no, wizard has died. Then bring the backup character in. How do you bring them in? It doesn't matter. Players playing the game again. That's good. If you don't fancy that, because making backup characters is actually kind of annoying, and maybe that's not your style of game, you could involve the player in other ways. You can ask them to manage, like, here's a monster, you manage them. Or here's an NPC, you're that NPC. You can give them something, you can give them a bit of the DM work to do, for them to do for you, keeping them involved in the game, even though they don't have a character. Keeping them participating, so they're having fun. Yeah, I'm more of a fan of that. Or if you have a backup character, use a backup character. That's my style. If you prefer not that, sure. I think that's more traditional, and there's nothing. It has its advantages. So you go about that whatever way you prefer, and what you can do once the player has their character and they're back in the game and they're playing again, that's not necessarily the end of the roller coaster, because there's always the rigmarole of, okay, you've got a character. How do we get them in the party? You can ask the other players to play along, help you out with this. The goal at the end of the day is to get everyone at the table playing in a party. How they come together, it doesn't have to be on you, the DM, alone to make that happen, but it does need to happen. you do need to introduce the new character. You do need to start building up bonds amongst the characters and with the NPCs. Start building up, like, tell us your backstory. What do you have to do with this plot? Like, how do I, the DM, work you into the plot? That kind of thing. That takes some work, and there's always the sting of, like, you've lost your character, so the player might play cautiously for quite a while, depending on how punished they feel. And that's something to take into account when you're running the game, planning the game, doing all sorts of things. So it's not that you need to, like, turn off all the death traps for a while. It's not that you need to, like, make the game easier, but just, you don't have to make it harder intentionally. You can just let the players find the difficulty on their own, rather than trying to bring it to them. So if you're playing, I can't think of an example. If you're in a dungeon and the wizard just died, and the next couple of rooms have traps, but they're not traps that you expect to get kills, and you were thinking about buffing them because you just were, maybe don't do that. Maybe just let the traps be simple traps that are only going to do a little bit of damage and maybe annoy the elf in the party because, you know, they're the tallest and therefore are going to take extra damage. That's okay. You've got your kill as a DM, so you don't need to be greedy. I guess there is an element of, like, how do you as a DM see your characters dying? I don't know if that's a universal thing, because I know some DMs hate it. They don't want their characters to die, straight up. It is a form of derailing the campaign. It is a form of not really I just don't want my characters to die. Like, there's plenty of reasons why a DM might say that. And so some DMs will just say you can't die. They might say that straight up in session 0. They might say that in behind the screen and not tell the players that, to just keep the appearance of death. But if any death happens, I'm going to fudge it and blah 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 blah. Like, that's a thing. Some DMs do not like death, and okay, that's fine. Some DMs probably don't like death, but they are open to the idea of the characters dying. So if it happens, if it happens and it's the right moment, yeah, they'll do it. But otherwise, nah, fudge. No, don't let that happen. And I'm sure there are some DMs that are like, if death happens, it happens. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to save you. I'm not going to stop it. Maybe that's a more common view. In all three of those cases, the DM is not rooting for the characters to die. And I think that is different than if there is a DM who is like, I am actively trying to kill these characters, and if they don't die, I don't feel like I have done my job as a DM. Like, I'm not having fun if characters don't die. That's different. That's a different... death has a different purpose in that kind of game than it does in the game where the DMs don't want the characters to die. So in that kind of stuff, the whole point of death, a bit more adversarial. It's the way for the DM to say, I won. At that point, you're not really concerned about how the players are responding to the death. You're probably not concerned about that at all. Probably more concerned with keeping the game going so you can get more death in. I don't know. That's probably an unfair thing to say. If you're a DM who you've accepted that death is in your game, you don't want it to happen, but you've accepted it to happen, and then it does happen. Does that feel more authentic? Does that make the experience feel better when it does happen? It can. Not necessarily in a sense of like, but I feel very much pride in my design because it got a character killed. Like, not necessarily in that sense, but DMs can get attached to characters just as much as players can, and seeing this character that you are interested to see what they do next. You're interested to see where they go. It is heartbreaking to see them die then, in that case. Even for the DM. Looking for those moments is perfectly fine. It's a good thing. But the only way for that to happen is if the DM does not have their hand on the scale to cause the death. If they are getting kills purely through either the players are doing something foolish and shouldn't be, or through just bad luck. Man, I keep getting a thought and then losing it. I gotta write it down as soon as I think it. I remember now. So there's another thing to consider when death is on the table. So some DMs will say, I accept death, but only in specific instances in my campaign. So like, you can't die in session 1. You can't die in session 2, maybe. You can die in the last session. You can die in session 5, but not 6, not 7, but maybe 8. You know, the death is not always on the table. Sometimes it's on the table. And why would you do that? There's a thing to consider. Not all deaths are equal. If you die during the story, trying to fulfill the story, doing something like a heroic sacrifice, through something like taking a risk that could result in death and then being unlucky, it's interesting when it serves the plot, and it is not interesting when it doesn't serve the plot. And what I mean by that is, if the whole plot is to stop this earth elemental from doing a bad thing, and the wizard dies in the line of duty trying to stop the earth elemental, that's more interesting than if the wizard is in camp and they find some suspicious berries and they eat them, and they roll a nat 1 on their con save, and the DM rolls max damage on whatever, and then the wizard dies. Like, okay, that's funny. It's funny. Is it interesting? Not from a narrative sense. So like, I guess there's nothing wrong with dying because it's funny, but it's more impactful when the wizard dies trying to do what they are set to accomplish and they fail. And you know, some DMs say that and they say, oh, well, what if I just make it so you can't die if it's not interesting? Okay. Sure. You can do that. Is it interesting? Sure. I guess it also depends on the tone of your game, which I haven't mentioned yet, and I probably should have mentioned that in the first 5 minutes. So the tone of your game is vitally important in setting how your characters and how your players will approach death. So in a silly game where we're just memeing, we're just having fun and all that, it's okay to die to something silly. It's kind of expected, and it's probably a situation where resurrection is actually fine in that case, because dying to suspicious berries and then getting resurrected doesn't make it not funny. Whereas dying to the earth elemental and then being resurrected makes it less impact. It's more inconvenient and less impactful for the wizard player. It's more impactful for the wizard to die and be dead, of course. If the tone of your game is hardcore, very serious, death is always on the line, that doesn't mean that death isn't impactful. Anything can kill you. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is if you're just doing a dungeon crawl and you have a tone where death is on the line, literally anything can kill you. Any door could have a deadly trap on it. That isn't a bad thing. That sets a specific tone for your game, which some players will really appreciate and really like. And if that's a thing you like you enjoy running as a DM, absolutely do that. That is a core part of the experience. Ideally, you're upfront with that. If you have a tone for your game where it's all about finding out what happens next. What happens next? Here's a plot. There's a bad guy. They've put a curse on the land. It's your goal as a party to lift that curse. Are you going to succeed or fail? Every session the players come to the table hoping to get closer to that goal. They don't come to the table expecting to die. That sets a different tone than the goofy table. It sets a different tone from the serious table where death, everyone dies. Every character has a 50% chance of dying every session. That is far different. And matching the quality of death to the tone enhances the tone. So if you die in a silly game in a silly way, great. You're doing it. If you die in a brutal game, great. You've just reinforced that this game is brutal. That's exactly what everyone at the table wants. So if you die in a game that is all about finding out what's happening next, that interrupts that tone in a way that is very impactful and something that you as a DM can kind of take advantage of. That's something that you can turn from this interrupted the pace of my game to this is accelerating the pace of my game with just a little bit of DM finesse. That's something that you can work with. And then if you do, that will reinforce the tone. Now I want to find out even more what happens next. How do we deal with this curse on the land? Yeah. How should I, as a DM, see to death happening? So I asked that poorly. So something that comes up, it's actually really hard to kill characters in D&D if you know what you're doing. Because in order to die, one of two things has to happen. Well, I shouldn't say one of two things. There's other ways to die. But you take more damage than you have maximum hit points. That's not true. If you take damage and the damage drops you down to below negative half, negative half, it takes you down to below negative your max hit points, you die. The other way to die is if you roll 3 death save failures. And both of those are really hard to do outside of level 1 and maybe level 2. Doing bringing someone down to negative max their hit points it can happen at level 1 because the average character has like 8 hit points. So you bring them down to -8 and they die. Yeah, okay. Failing 3 death saves is actually pretty difficult if the party has a lot of healing, which, that's kind of a thing you encourage. It's kind of a thing that the game encourages as well. Someone has healing word, it's going to be really hard to kill anyone in the party as long as they have healing word, because you roll a death save, you fail. Cool. You get healing worded. Okay, write that off. No more death save failure. The only way to make that happen is to either really, really, as a DM, amp up the damage you deal, which is pretty blunt. The players are going to notice if you're fighting an ogre and the ogre hits someone for 88 damage. Like, what are you doing, DM? And if you want to get death save failures on a character, you need to attack them while they're downed. And attacking characters while they're downed is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's something that you should, first of all, it's something that's set by the tone of your game, whether that's a good idea or not. And it's something that you should get confirmed with the players, ideally during a session 0, that I'm going to do this. I'm going to attack players. I'm going to attack characters while they're downed. Or that's possible. Because if a character is downed and monsters are still hitting them, that does lend the player that's being hit to think like, oh, the DM hates me. Like, oh, this is personal. This isn't them attacking the character. This is them attacking me, because I'm not a threat at this point. I'm not opposing the DM anymore, and they're still attacking me. So there is there. If you don't get that clarified with the players first, and you don't have massive damage on the table, it's really hard to kill a character. There are effects in this game that are like, character instantly dies, bam. Those effects are generally not available prior to the players getting access to resurrection magic. So the instant death abilities don't start happening until the players start getting instant resurrection. I shouldn't say instant. They start getting resurrection. And that's kind of it's designed that way. You shouldn't be throwing instant death at your characters at level 3. That's very cruel. Probably won't land. It won't land with the players. Instant death at level 3. What are you doing, DM? And if you do have a situation where like everyone expects that no one's going to die, because it's really hard to die, and you as the DM are not putting anything out there to encourage death. You're not buffing the damage of monsters, and you're not attacking characters while they're downed. So it's not impossible for death to happen at that point, but no one expects it to happen at that point. So if a character does die because either they got careless or because they got super unlucky, like mega unlucky, no one expected it to happen. That's where you really need to be prepared as a DM to sort of finesse what is going on. You want to slow the pace of the game down, let the characters react, respond, get the player to step aside, start making a character or whatever. Have a moment to let the narrative slow down, and then rocket it forward. Use the death to inspire the pacing of the game to accelerate. Someone just died, so now shit gets real. That's ideally where that happens. And that's where death has its greatest impact, I think. I don't think if death is common, it doesn't matter as much. And if death is expected, it doesn't matter as much. And if death is rare and no one expects it, that's where it hits you. And that's where you as the DM get to flex your narrative muscle. Because you didn't plan it. No one plans for that. No one planned for that. So you have no prep for like what to do when a character dies. You don't have prep for that. No one has prep for that. So you get to improv that. You get to improv what happens next, how we respond to this, and how we turn this into a new wing of the story. What about NPC death? Don't need to worry about that nearly as much. I mean, we need to worry about it. It's a problem. Especially if the players are engaged with the game and they really care about this NPC, and then the NPC dies and they're like, but there's a lot less risk in dealing with and how you approach NPC death and how you deal with it. It's important to like take advantage of it and use it and introduce it in the story, or not introduce, weave it into the story and get the characters to respond and all that. Maybe NPC death is a good like practice ground for how you handle a player death, character death, not a player death. That could be a way to practice, but it's low risk. You don't have a player sitting out because an NPC died. And you don't have players wondering, okay, how do we reroll? What the NPC needs to reroll a new NPC, and how do we get them in the party? You don't need to worry about that. You can just go at whatever pace to deal with the loss of NPC and then move on. Yeah. You'll figure it out. You don't need advice on how to deal with that. I've mentioned Session Zero quite a bit during this past hour, and Session Zero is a very, very, very common topic that lots and lots of DMs, lots and lots of other streams and videos talk about. It's a very important thing to do. It's also a very nebulous thing to do. It's very, very easy to say, here's the thing, you should have talked about it in Session Zero. If you didn't, oops. What is Session Zero? Session Zero is magic. Session Zero is it's a scapegoat for a lot of problems that can happen at a table, to where the solution is talk with your players. Just talk with your players. Session Zero is just how you say you should have talked with your players before this happened, in hindsight. So in hindsight, you should have talked with your players about what happens when a character dies. You should have talked about how lethal you're expecting the game to be. You should have talked about what you like what level will will new characters come in at, what effect will it have on, now that's what level your character will come in and And do you get to start playing immediately, or do you need to be brought into the narrative? Do you get to sit out for 30 minutes and you get to be the DM's buddy, or do you get to come in immediately? Whenever I or someone says during session 0, what they're really saying is in hindsight. Yeah. Session 0 is a very, very easy scapegoat. There is no one size fits all how to run a session 0. There is no like, you did a session 0 and you did it wrong, because there's no easy formula for how to tell that you did it right. Session 0 is just, here's some advice. Talk to your players about it. Ideally, talk to them before the game starts. But realistically, just talk, communicate. This is a game, and we're all here to have fun. And let's communicate, get all on the same page so that we're all having fun. That goes well beyond death, character death. That goes to basically every part of the game. There's no off topic, or I shouldn't say off topic. There's no off limits when it comes to a session 0. You can talk about anything and everything, anything that might come up. Do you have Do you have players who don't like certain material? Like they have fear of heights, or they have a fear of, I don't know. They don't like certain material in the game. Talk during the session 0 and say it. Does it have to be during the session 0? No. Just talk to have a conversation with the table and say, hey, here's the content I don't like. Please don't put it in the game. Yeah, that's fine. You can talk about like, here's the stuff I like. Here's what's fun. I enjoy this. Talk to the table about it. Yeah. Here's the kind of game I want to run. Here's the kind of game I want to participate in. Great for session 0. Great for any time. There's like a million billion things that you could talk about during a session 0, but not every table wants to talk about everything. Some tables, it's like the session 0, aka the pre-campaign talk is, I'm going to run a game of D&D. Would you like to play D&D? And all the players will be like, yes, I would like a D&D, please. Not a D&D. I would like one D&D, please. I shouldn't say one D. I would like a unit of D&D, please. And that's all they need to talk. They sit at the table, they're playing D&D to have fun. That's all you need. Other tables are like, I need to set some ground rules here. I want to be a wizard, and I want to see this content, and I like this, and I don't like this and that, and please, if there's any problems, let me know with my character. And it's like, there's a whole list of things you could talk about during a session 0 that are very, very important for that table, very essential to talk about that. And that's fine. That's good. Like both tables are having fun, and there's nothing wrong with either of that. And yeah, session 0. Evening, dude. Hey, Timothy, how's it going? I think my ultimate point, I may have gotten lost from my ultimate point, was death is very much a topic that you should talk with your players about if you are unsure how to handle. If you are sure how to handle, tell them what your plan is, and you're good. That will help. That will help you out. There are lots of topics that are like that. And it's not something you want to figure out after the death happens, because that is going to be putting a lot on you, and you're not doing yourself any favors when you do it like that. Just having a few beers and chilling. Nice. Oh. Well, I just noticed that I missed a whole segment of my notes. I want to talk about how the players respond to their characters dying, because there's a particular thing to consider. When the character dies, the player is naturally going to assume that there's a cause of the death, and ideally, let's break out those causes. There are a couple of causes that the player might come to. They might think, I effed up. I made a mistake. I did a thing. I knew death was an option, and I died, and I deserve it. They blame themselves. That's one thing they might blame. Another thing is, I rolled poorly, and I didn't do anything wrong, but like, there's always a risk, and I rolled 3 natural ones in a row, and I was standing in just the wrong spot, and the monster wasn't targeting me, but I was in the way, so I died. But really, it's the dice that killed me. That's another possibility. And then there's another possibility for the player to blame. They say, oh man, that earth elemental was really fixated on me. It was punching me very, very aggressively. And I died because the earth elemental wanted me dead. And the earth elemental is an extension of the DM. I died because the DM wanted me dead. That's another possibility. And it's actually very dangerous to have the players think that, because that leads down the road of like, well, the DM wanted me to die, so this is a competition now. I'm not dying because the narrative. I'm not dying because it's the dice. I'm dying because the DM is targeting me, so I should respond accordingly and build my character to fight the DM. That's dangerous. That's not going to result in a healthy game, probably. Unless your game is intended for that, then okay, go nuts. But most games, I don't feel like, have that dynamic going on where the DM is actively trying to kill the players and the players actively are trying to resist that. Bit of light entertainment after an unpleasant event. Really philosophical subject. Yeah. Now, when a character death happens, you, the DM, have some sway in how the player decides on who to blame by how you react, and also like how your demeanor during the game, and like how you play things out. So like, if you are very impartial, you're behind the DM screen and you have you're trying to hide your face and you're not looking at anyone. That's very different than if you're actively trying to be like, wizard player, I'm sorry, but like, we've got to roll this here, and anything but a 1 and you're fine. And then they roll a 1 and you're like, oh no, you rolled a 1. You roll again. And then they roll again, and then they're dead. Like, okay, well, that's going to result in a different response. That there's just some sort of like emotional reaction to how you are running the game, and that's just something to keep in mind. There's running a game as a fan of the players with empathy makes it less likely that the players blame you, even in situations where like you totally killed that player. or you totally kill that character. Even where you're the one, you know you're the one who did that. Like that wasn't the dice. You could have easily intervened or made it so that like death didn't have to be the stake there. But being a fan of the players and showing more deference, or appearing to show more deference, can have a dramatic effect on how the players respond to what happens. Ultimately, a lot of the times, the players may put their character in dumb situations, but they wouldn't. They may not have done that if you hadn't built the situation the way you did as a DM. And if you really want to get technical, like the ogre may have, or the earth elemental may have killed the wizard, but you are the one who put the earth elemental there. You're the one who decided the earth elemental would do that smash. All of the circumstances that resulted in a character's death can kind of be traced back to you, and you don't want to draw attention to that fact because that's the road to adversarial gaming. If you die and through your death another lives, then 0 death occurs, then there would have been 2, and as a result there was only 1, although there are more dies on the other side, so there are scales. I don't know how to respond to that. At a bare minimum, for every death, the cause of death is something you put there as a DM. So it's not about actually figuring out who's responsible for this death. That's not what it's about. It's about the appearance of who's responsible, because because who's actually responsible is probably going to lead back to you more often than not. And that's part of the reason why you don't just put monsters down that do way too much damage, and you don't have monsters that attack downed characters without first getting that cleared with the players. Because if you tell the players up front, like, monsters are totally going to attack you while you're downed. If you tell them that in session 0, and then in session 3, the earth elemental is punching the wizard while they're down, the wizard is far less likely to be like, the DM is targeting me because they hate me, and more like, well, the earth elemental is punching me because the DM gave us forewarning that this could happen. So really, it's my fault for not planning for this happening. You know, it's likelier to put the players, it's likely to give the players the appearance that they are in control of why they died. It's fascinating. So there's no free will. There's no free will? No, I'm talking about like the player's response to the death happening. In a game, so am I. I mean, no one chose to die. I'm talking about fault, not choice. I mean, like if the party goes into a room and there's an earth elemental there, and the earth elemental punches the wizard and the wizard dies, like no one chose. Presumably, no one chose the wizard to die. Fault is a result of choice. Yeah, but the fault is the choice of the DM putting the earth elemental in the room. How are you, bro? I'm good. Doing good. mean, it's not impossible for the players to say, this is where I die. And the DM says, no, I don't want you to die here. And then the players do anyway. Like, it's not impossible, but that's pretty far-fetched. It's something that the DM has a little bit of culpability at all times. And it's not about like who's truly culpable. It's about the appearance of it. If the players are having fun, if they're enjoying themselves, and the death happens, but you've set up all of the if you've done all of the, if you've talked with your players beforehand and you've told them like, all right, be aware of X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be rough here. It could be brutal. Characters could die. Here's what happens when the character dies. If you do all your homework, and then it happens, players are far less likely to blame you, far more likely to put the blame on themselves. And that's good. That's where you can keep the game running smoothly in that case. So, that's kind of what you want. Been watching a lot of RimWorld. It's great. Yeah. RimWorld is good. Because if your players blame you when they die, that's going to turn adversarial really quick. And likewise, they will respond in kind. And then it'll maybe be less fun for you, or maybe it won't as a DM. If that's something you want, then great. If that's not something you want, though, it'll become less fun for you as a DM. So, those are incompetent. He has a channel. He's great. I can recommend his channel. Cool. Usually I watch him, then you. Alrighty. Is there anything more to discuss about this? So it's a very emotionally blunt thing to happen in a game. I can't think of anything more blunt because it's a very relatable in a grim way. And it's not that you shouldn't do it, shouldn't have it in your game, but if you do have it in your game, it will overshadow everything else. So just keep that in mind. Maybe take that into account. Maybe have a plan for, narrative-wise, for what happens if a character dies here. What do you do? How are you going to respond? And it's unlikely to happen in many games because death is actually pretty hard to find in 5e. But if it does happen, you've got all this preparation. You're set. You're ready. You're good. It happens. You pounce on it. You have a memorable game. Everyone remembers it. And that's the goal. Everyone having fun. They just dropped a remaster of Hexen and Heretic on Game Pass. Nice. I like those games. (16-player co-op). I mean, I have those games on GZ Doom, so I support a remaster, but I kind of wish Raised Dead and Resurrection weren't in this game. They do kind of ruin it for me. That could be part of the reason why I don't like high level D&D. It just doesn't feel the same. I think I'm okay with Revivify though, because it's not great because if someone dies, you can just bring them back. But at least there's a gate. Like you have to do it within a minute. So it is possible for like permanent death to happen. It's not off the table. It's far more off the table for like raised dead. It's very unlikely that a character is going to be dead for more than 10 days and that player is not bored or hasn't left yet. And then there's True Resurrection and Resurrection. These are spells, so True Resurrection is insane. True Resurrection is you're not dead anymore. Deal with it. Boom. There's nothing can stop me from True Resurrecting. It's very expensive, so I don't entirely understand why this spell exists. But Resurrection is resurrect anyone who hasn't been dead for more than a century. This is a spell like no PC is going to be dead for a century. I don't know what situation. The situation you would cast Resurrection over Raised Dead is Resurrection restores your body, whereas Raised Dead, if you got decapitated, then okay, well, this does not restore missing body parts. But they take the sting out of death in a way that it just turns into attacks, and I don't like that. And also, True Resurrection. Why is this spell in the game? This spell is in the game not because a designer said, oh man, we've got some really beefy challenges ahead. We need to have a resurrection spell in the game to justify these challenges. That's not why. It's in the game because it's a big honking resurrection spell. And it's more for people to argue about on the internet than people to actually cast. Still have to get around to Brutal Doom. Some of the GZ mods are insane and masterpieces. True Res is max level spell usually. Apart from that, you have scrolls and shit. Does not restore missing body parts. Like I have never seen a spell. I've never seen True Resurrection cast and been like, that really added to the game. Thank you for casting that. Thank you very much. I'm not actually a fan of this spell. I'd rather it not be in the game. I would also rather Resurrection not be in the game. Both this spell and just the very concept beyond Revivify. I'll allow Revivify. I don't like it, but sure. If it were up to me, it wouldn't be that Resurrection wasn't allowed, but I would make it really hard to do. I would make it something that the average table doesn't get access to. Like you'd have to do like a weird ritual, and you'd have to like the stars would have to align, and you'd need to kill a dragon, and then the resurrection happens from the dragon's corpse, or something crazy bonkers. Something that's like, you wouldn't do this unless you were really, 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 really invested in this character, and like it's breaking the game not to resurrect them. Like you just, okay, at that point, let's go kill the dragon to resurrect the wizard and move on. Sure. Not this. This is oh well. You know the silly thing about True Resurrection, I don't think that was in the old, this isn't here because of tradition. I don't think there's an old school True Resurrection spell like an AD&D. This wasn't like Resurrection was the best you got, which to be fair is pretty good, but this got added either in 3rd edition or it was added in this edition, which would be extra weird to me because why? I think this was in third edition. But I don't know why. You know what I haven't talked about? I haven't talked about Reincarnate. This spell gets a pass. You know? This one, I would actually allow this on top of Revivify. Because this is not a serious spell. But this is a fun little joke spell. I shouldn't say joke. This is a meme spell. You come back. You come back to life as a different species. And you can get really creative with this if you want. You don't have to come back as these species. I mean, it actually says that right here. Or the DM chooses another playable species. And I would highly endorse getting a little silly with that, you know? It is basically impossible to min-max with the basis of I'm going to make this character. And then they're going to die. And then the druid's going to reincarnate them as a potato chip or something off the wall, and then my build will be complete. Like, no, that no one does that. So you can reincarnate as like whatever you want. Reincarnate as an elephant. Like, yeah, that's totally fine. Why am I blanking on what can I? Any monster. Pick a monster, reincarnate as that monster. The sky's the limit. Where are the monsters? Oh, they're down here. Yeah. Reincarnate as a direwolf. Reincarnate as a druid. Reincarnate as an elephant. Reincarnate as a frog. Yeah. Embrace the crazy. Reincarnate makes no sense in like a brutal game. In a brutal game, you would just roll a new character. You wouldn't like reincarnate is really expensive, and you don't get. You come back as like an elf. Like, okay, is that better than just re-rolling? Probably not. In a meme game though, just embrace it. Go nuts. Come back as a lion. A talking lion, of course. You know. You should, according to the contradiction of true or however or not true UV chosen, you set your alignment. I was watching RimWorld last night, and there was a group of sentient Gabugis having a rave. And the quest was you get them the party hats before they come to help you. Come back as a cheese board to distract an army of slimes. I think that's for that tone of game, that's perfect. Reincarnate, I give a full pass on just for what it is. I think it is a good way to handle resurrection. If you're like, I don't want death in my game, but I want reincarnation. Yeah. There it is. Use that spell. Enjoy it. You can take the material cost off it. Let's people just cast it for free. You die, you come back as a giant crab. Now we're playing D&D. Tell me that doesn't sound silly. Crab rave, that's right. And it's not something you can plan around. It's not like, all right, here's the strategy. We all keep dying until we're all crabs. And then we beat this dungeon. Like, that's insane. If someone does that, then I apologize. I can't imagine that being anyone's strategy. Anyway. That's kind of it for resurrection options. There are magic items that can resurrect. There's is it in here? Could it be in here? There's the Wand of Resurrection. Come on. Come on. It's not here, but I assure you it's a thing. I think it just casts Resurrection. I think that's all it's doing. Resurrect as your enemies. That's true. If you are facing a dungeon of demons, you could reincarnate as a demon. That doesn't make any sense. You could, if you're facing a dungeon of oozes, you could reincarnate as an ooze. And then just, vibe. Maybe talk your way in. Maybe have, maybe hang out with some of the more chill oozes in the dungeon and yeah. Go nuts. Is there a way to list all the spells? I don't want to just all the resurrection spells are under R except True Resurrection. All the resurrection spells. Raise Dead, Reincarnate, Resurrection, Revivify. That's it. True Resurrection. Is this the list that the 2014 version had? I want to check that. I want to check that real quick because I think. Oh wait, is the 2014 rules even on here anymore? I guess not. Never mind. Maybe if I change this to. Nope, that didn't work. What if I just... All right. Yeah, what did Resurrect... What did this table for Reincarnate look like? Because it's got races on here that absolutely were not in the Player's Handbook in 2014. So was it just a smaller list? Or... Because in 3rd edition, the Reincarnate table was very large, and it contained a lot of things in there that were not playable characters. Well, I shouldn't say not playable characters. They were not standard playable characters like kobolds and gnolls and stuff. And I think that's the right way to do it. I think that's how you do it. 1,000 gold. Not a tax. No need for it to be a tax. Whatever. And you know what you could do? This idea just came to me completely randomly, but I've never done this before. I've never heard of anyone doing this before. But what if you cast Reincarnate on someone, and their old character is still dead, but their new character, they made a new character. They're the ones who come back to life. Their Reincarnate is their new character. And their old character remains dead. I think the reason I've never heard anyone do that, because usually the expectation is the new character is just coming back for free. So why would you spend 1,000 gold to do something that's going to happen for free? So never mind. Put that thought away. That's a silly thought. Is your PC all right? Yeah, my PC's all right. Yeah, my fans. Yeah. That was in Diablo 1. Then you had to pick up your body. No, that's not what I meant. I meant like when you die and you're making a new character, and the expectation is you're going to be playing that new character because your old character's dead. And then the druid comes and casts Reincarnate on your body. You reincarnate as the new character. But why would you do that? It doesn't make sense. Just forget that thought. Throw that thought away. Yeah. Yeah, if you have any questions about D&D, feel free to ask them. I am out of water, so. What about split reincarnation? What is split reincarnation? Where you have limited influence on limited characters? I still don't know what that means. Couldn't tell you. So you split yourself. So you've got two characters. Okay, if you split yourself by two, got it. Then you'd have 50% influence on two of enemies in their role. Well, how are you splitting yourself? How is that happening? Through soul gems? No idea. I mean, if you're controlling two characters, you can reincarnate two characters. Yeah. But two of your parties that held those soul gems would have to still be alive in the party. Wait, what soul gems? But if you're in a soul gem, then you're dead. I mean, if you want to control multiple characters, there's a spell that will let you do that. Is this one, Simulacrum. You create a clone of someone within 10 feet of you. Could be you. Congrats, you are now you and this clone. There's also the actual spell clone, but I think that one explicitly says you can't control both at the same time. Oh, this technically counts as another form of resurrection, but I'll allow it. Possibilities. This is why I love AD&D. It's more like hologram and Baldur's Gate. I think you could also easily, if you wanted to be mean, have a plot where one of your clones gets corrupted and turns evil. And hey, that's a BBG now. Your clone. Although this is a level 8 spell, so who's casting level 8 spells and you don't have a BBG yet, you know? Pillars of Eternity is so awesome. Just come out of the first tomb. I forgot about this spell. I've never cast Clone ever in any edition. I think in previous editions it wasn't worth doing, but I can't remember why. Did you complete it? Yeah. I think you said in later your game that's when it starts to get mental. It is. There's a certain point. It's you'll know it when you get there, because then the game opens up. That's when it starts to get mental. Probably gonna take me a year. I mean, I don't know. I could check my played time, but it's less than 40 hours, unless I'm misremembering. It might be 50 hours. Can I bring it up? You're at 178 hours with Underrail. I don't even know how many. Let me just. I can search. Why am I not searching? Pillar. Yeah. 48 hours. Baldur's Gate 3. Well, that's not right. My Baldur's Gate 3, it says my Baldur's Gate 3 playtime is 30 minutes. That's a bug. Oh, I know why it says that. Never mind. I have no idea how long I've played Baldur's Gate 3. But I don't think it's 178 hours. I think it's like less than 100. You've only got 70 hours on Quake 1. I mean, that's really good for Quake 1. Oh, for Underrail? Well, I know, but like I'm just like trying to put that in perspective. It's hard to measure like how much playtime does a game actually have versus like how long does it take to play that game. Like playing casually versus playing to get through. That's what I mean. spend hours and hours in a library and game. I mean, that works for some games, but that would work for yeah, that does work for. I don't think that works for like Diablo or like Quake. Making up my own law in between to make the game deeper. Yes, it does. How do you make it take longer in Quake? By opening it up in your mind. I don't follow. But I can't disagree. Like, sure. By going deeper, the portals that the game opens for you. In Quake? I just have to say that's beyond me, and I'm thirsty now. I will stop here. This is what it is. Created my own alphabet. Okay, I mean, if you're creating your own language, that adds to the world, but I don't know if that adds to the game. I don't know if you can count that. Cloud kill. Yeah. Fun spell. Yeah, I'm gonna have to dig for more topics to talk. So I don't particularly know what are questions new players have. May end up doing a repeat because a lot of players have the same questions. A lot of new players have the same questions, and the advice doesn't change. It's not like, well, last year, here's what we knew about death, but this year, we now know that actually it's better to do. Like, there's no real large scale innovations that have been going on for running a tabletop game. That's kind of been just same every year, and yeah, the advice doesn't really age. So I don't know how I feel about doing a repeat question, but gotta find something to talk about. There's plenty of current events to talk about, but I don't know. That doesn't interest me as much. Thanks for the company. Have a good night. Thanks to you too. Hope you're having a good time. Feel better, and good luck with your shoot. Was it Pillars of Eternity? What were you playing? I spaced out. Good luck with your playthrough. And as always, have fun. Have lots of fun games. And have a good one. See you all later.